Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'm going to continue the recent trend for taking a look at the reporting of Brexit from a media outlet that essentially created this situation. Only this week I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to take a look at an article in The Times that caught my attention, which is a publication that sort of both supported and opposed Brexit. But regardless of their stance during the referendum, nonetheless backed the Conservatives at the last election and are now complaining at Boris Johnson for doing exactly what he said he would do. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news in politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So I'm going to start off with this one by saying all hell seemed to break loose in the last day or two news-wise. I've now got like half a week's worth in the space of a few hours. So there'll be some fairly major news stories for me to talk about over the next few days, but I'll continue with the schedule as planned. So basically, if we go back to 2018, Boris Johnson was the Foreign Secretary, the same Foreign Secretary who managed to land a British citizen in an Iranian prison where she is still separated from her family years later. And he was part of the hard Brexit contingent in Theresa May's cabinet. Various corporations were warning about the consequences of adopting such an unwise approach to Brexit, referring to May's red lines. In response, Boris Johnson said, "Screw business." Actually, he didn't say screw. He said another word, but I'll spare you the word that he actually used because it may offend some viewers or upset YouTube, one of the two. Needless to say, it rhymes with duck and has much the same meaning in this context as screw. Now, fast forward a few years and the Times have an article entitled, "Tories are no longer the party of business." Now, this is a phrase that has been flying around a lot lately. Even some Tory MPs are saying it. See, the thing is, I've never really seen them as the party of business in my adult life. They have always been the party of bad business, sure. They are the party of low regulation, low taxation, and a small laissez-faire state. This is unquestionably what they are the party of. Nobody denies that description. That's not me being offensive. Supporters agree that absolutely that's what the Conservative Party stand for. Opponents agree absolutely that's what the Conservative Party stand for. It's their core values and has been for centuries. But the state is not a hindrance to good business. Plenty of businesses have flourished during every Labour government that has ever existed, and plenty of businesses have suffered during every Conservative government, although none quite so much as with the current one. Because this extreme Tory Brexit has hit both good and bad businesses alike, it doesn't really matter how well run your business is. If your goods are suddenly a lot more expensive in Europe, and you can't guarantee speedy and reliable delivery, and you depend upon customers in Europe, you are going to lose business. That's all there is to it. Don't matter how well run your business is. Unless you are producing something that your competitors in the rest of Europe can't match, then you cannot compete for anywhere near as much business as before. But this particular article was actually having a pop at the Brexit immigration policy. Now, it made me laugh when they basically said that the Tories might as well call themselves the Labour Party now, which it seems funny seeing this from the other side, because I've had to roll my eyes all my life at some people in Labour moaning that other people in Labour are basically just red Tories. Which is like, this is a nonsense proposition, because what benefit is there in someone who's really a Tory being in the Labour Party? Because in this country, their political career would be much easier and more successful if they were just in the Conservative Party, because they're in power far more often, they win far more seats. But here we have a paper actually suggesting that this much more far-right Conservative government than any that has existed in my lifetime is actually behaving like the Labour Party. And on what do they base this? The notion that when businesses complain about not getting enough staff, ministers just tell them to pay higher wages. And sure, this is also the line from Labour. But the difference is that Labour want the wages increased because it's fundamentally unfair for anyone to be working full-time and not earning enough to afford the basics of life in this country. Or for skilled workers, like lorry drivers, to be flogging themselves in a difficult job that only so many people in the country could even do for what is only just a realistic living wage. The reason ministers are just moaning at businesses to pay higher wages has nothing at all to do with concern for the social welfare of the poorly paid. If this government had even the slightest concern there, they would not have announced the highest tax burden that any government, Labour or the Conservatives, have implemented since the 1940s, and then dumped that burden squarely on the shoulders of the poor in order to compensate the already wealthy. Now, the reason ministers are telling businesses to just pay higher wages is not because they're suddenly socialists. It's because of that small state thing, that laissez-faire state that the Times has traditionally supported in the Conservative governments. Because what is a laissez-faire small government but one that leaves all the problems in the country up to the general population to sort out amongst themselves? Hence, the government are saying pay higher wages because they can think of nothing else to suggest that businesses do, and they don't want to do anything themselves. Small state. And Conservatives of the kind who write for the Times generally love that sort of behaviour. Except, of course, when it causes a problem for them. Now, don't get me wrong, it's causing a problem for us all. Wages should be higher for these workers, but as I've repeatedly said, the way to achieve that is government intervention. Parliament has the power to set minimum wage levels. The problem with leaving it to market forces when you've just shrunk your entire market by such a massive amount is that businesses simply can't adapt quickly enough. You know, like a lot of these vacancies, for example, don't matter how much you raise the wages, if the unemployed aren't in those areas, you can't get the workers in. This is something that has to take place over a long time. People migrating to where the jobs are slowly, bit by bit. You can't do it all at once. I've likened it in the past to environmental change and adaptation in nature. When an environment changes slowly over time, evolution does its work to adapt species to succeed in the changing landscape. When you get a sudden, massive change, that's what scientists call an extinction event. As a result of Brexit, the landscape has been thrown into upheaval. The government have the power to accelerate or decelerate the changes because it's entirely political. You know, as I'm preparing this video, I hear that the government are toning down the checks that are due on EU imports at the end of this month. One of the big stories that threw up just at an awkward time. You know, so that'll have to be tomorrow before I can tackle that one. But the point is that where the government won't scale back the changes to a more manageable level, businesses will go under because it's too rapid for them to adapt. That's all there is to it. Some businesses will naturally be able to adapt because by accident rather than design, they'll be able to manage in the new landscape. They will have features that allow for business to continue in the new landscape. Maybe not as well as in the pre-Brexit one for which they were designed, but well enough. But many won't. And this is what has the Times concerned. But I think it is a bit rich coming from them. See, the Times did technically back Remain during the referendum, though the Sunday Times supported Leave. So it's like a bit of a foot in both camps there. But the Times did support the Conservatives during the last election. They knew that the Conservatives were led by Boris Johnson, who had earlier said, with regards Brexit, duck business. He won the general election, which they were pleased about. Now, granted, they're not huge fans of Boris Johnson himself, but they still chose him over the alternative. So doesn't it seem a bit rich that the party whose leader said screw business is now complaining that this same government is screwing business? I mean, I think it's fair to complain when a government breaks manifesto promises. You know, they could complain that they're raising national insurance contributions because they promised not to. I even think it's not unreasonable to support a party in an election, but still say, but on balance, I prefer this party, but there were a few things I wasn't happy about, and call for them to go further than they promised in government. But when a party actually announces that it really doesn't care about business, then forms a government with your support, is it really reasonable to then complain that it is doing exactly what it said it would do, which is nothing at all to help business? I'm not sure I do. So although the Times may be one of the more grown-up Tory newspapers, certainly by the standards of the likes of the Sun or the Express, it really is going to have to decide what it wants. This is the Conservative Party now. I'm not saying it always will be, though I will say this seems to be the natural trajectory that Thatcherism took them towards. But if the Conservatives ever get back to the party that they want it to be, it will not be by writing articles such as this. Their attitudes towards business, of the sort they're complaining about, have won them a huge election victory. This same attitude will persist until it is no longer an electoral asset. In other words, if there are Conservatives who do not like what the Conservative Party are now doing, they should bear in mind that it will not stop until that attitude is defeated. And that will not happen until key voters are aware of the damage being caused and vote accordingly. In other words, if the Times do not like this extreme Tory Brexit, it would do well to start pointing out the consequences more clearly to its readers. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you do, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.